Hi, I'm Bill Gaines, host of the Outdoor View, and welcome to the place where we educate, connect, and learn to protect our outdoor traditions. Hey, today I have the pleasure of chatting with Robert Moore, who's a longtime friend of mine and one of the most passionate archers that I've ever met in my life. And Robert's going to talk a little bit about his life with archery and the California Bowmen Hunters State Archery Association. So, Robert, welcome to you.
Thanks, Bill, for having me today.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. Hey, Robert, as I just mentioned, I mean, you are the most passionate archer I love archery, as you know, but I've never met anybody that loves archery as much as you do. Tell me a little bit about your own personal story. How did you get into archery?
Well, now we're talking back in the 80s, and same as most other people, a friend, gets into it and says, hey, you need to try this. So I got into it and kind of fumbled around for a while and started taking some classes to, help my way along. And then a lot of trial and error. So it's been, 40 some odd years or 30 some odd years. And so that's what got me into it and involved.
You're one of the people that convinced me, whether you knew it or not, to get into archery. And, as a longtime hunter, obviously always hunted with firearms. And then suddenly I started thinking about wow, elk hunting during the rut with a bow would really be cool. And then I thought about turkeys. Wow, turkey hunting with a bow would really be cool. And boy, I jumped right into it, and you were a big help with that. So I appreciate that. Now, how did you get involved with the California Bowmen Hunters State Archery Association? What made you take that step?
There's actually two things that happened. I had one of their legislative representatives for Region 2 contact me, and he was actually a fellow bow hunter ed instructor as I was, and brought to my attention some legislation and some stuff in the commission that maybe we probably should be active about, and he needed help. Mm-hmm. So I guess that was my foot in the door, and understanding the process of what can happen, and so I just moved forward with that, and just kind of been laddering up the chain in the legislative part of California Bowmen Hunters.
Now, you've been with CBHSAA for a long time. When did you actually come on board?
So I've been a bow hunter ed instructor since the early 90s. And it wasn't until probably about 95, maybe, I joined, because that's when, like I said, the fellow bow hunter ed instructor, told me about some things. And it's like, okay, well, I volunteer for that, and I want to volunteer for this. I just moved on from there.
Yeah, you've been doing this about as long as I have. I started in 1992. So yeah, so you've been doing this for going on 3 decades, which is why I've known you for so long. I got to tell you, I mean, California Bowmen Hunters, you guys have been amazingly effective on the political front and the legislative front, working with the department on various regulation changes and the commission and so forth. I mean, a pretty proud history right there. Well, before we get into the details of the policy issues that you guys have been very effective, for archers on, can you give us a little bit of history about California Bowmen Hunters?
Sure. Back in 1943, the North, in basic terms, the North Archery Association and the South Archery Association actually was at a Fish and Game Commission meeting, and at the meeting quickly realized they need to join forces to be a better foe to promote what they wanted in bow hunting. So that started the process. That's where the California Bowmen Hunters State Archery Association came into play, because we both service the bow hunting community plus the target archery or just general archery shooting community. And over the years, we have been fairly effective in getting certain archery seasons and archery tags. Our very first one actually happened in 1962. We got the first 10-day archery deer season. So that was the first one, but pretty much everything else that involved archery has been, we've had influence on it or proceeded to try to get that. So one of the last things we had got was bow fishing for catfish in limited waters. The last big one that I personally worked on was the archery turkey season. So the archery turkey season took a couple of years. The biggest one to even try to get outside of the first deer season was elk. So we worked a total of about 16 years with the department, with other conservation groups to establish some archery tags. As you know, elk in California is very limited. There's not that many tags available. So to try to peel out a few of those tags for bow hunters was tough. And we had to have some proof. So we actually paid and had some GPS collars, or then it was telemetry collars, to be given to the department to get some surveys done, to have some science backing our position. So I believe it was the first, no, it wasn't the first archery season. In the earlier years when they started the elk season was, I believe, in the early 90s. And one of our members, our archery Goodnight, she took a massive bull off Grizzly Island with her bow. So we had a little bit of history of being success and not having any problems, which also helped our cause to try to get the season. So took a long time, but we got it. So and now we just do what we can to keep things maintained and in status. And then as stuff comes up and maybe we do get some more elk tags available, we'll request an addition to that. But the science has to back it up too. We just can't arbitrarily ask for it and make the assumption that one will get it or need it. There has to be science backing up the additional tags.
No, absolutely. And I will tell you, because I've had the pleasure of working with you guys for quite some time. You guys have a tremendous amount of respect within the Department of Fish and Wildlife, for sure. And not to mention, down at the Capitol and in front of the Fish and Game Commission too. One of the other victories that California Bowmen Hunters had recently was changing the draw weight, on bows. So it's little stuff, little changes in the regulations and so forth that go unnoticed out there. That's stuff that you guys are doing, to enhance archery hunting and making sure that the various fish and game code and regulations, are beneficial to archers as well as the animals that we pursue. I mean, I'll talk about that draw weight a little bit, Robert. I mean, that was a nice victory. That was just a couple of years ago, I think.
That was a couple of years ago. There's 3 major equipment changes that we've pursued or helped clarify. One was the expandable broadhead and how it was measured. Mm-hmm. That was kind of a little bit of a fiasco because there was no set standard. So we worked with the department and LAO and got a standard. Same with lighted nocks. But the draw weight issue was basically your hunting arrow, your legal hunting arrow, just had to be cast at 130 yards. Well, you could easily take a 20-pound recurve or even a compound with 20 pounds at the right angle. You could get it out that far, but that's in no way ethical to take an animal. Some of the other states were dropping their minimum draw weights just so there was a number. One, it was easier for law enforcement to enforce because if they were out in the field, they had to find a clear 138-yard pass and then have, be able to shoot that distance. Now they can, have a bow scale and pull it back and see if it meets the minimum. So it was just more or less updating that regulation, but also make it easier to understand. But we mirrored what other states either already had in place or were actually reducing their draw weights to accommodate the R3 effort and bring more people into the outdoor world, basically.
Yeah, no, it's one thing about archery. I mean, when you look at hunting, technology really hasn't changed that much. I mean, we've had shotguns for quite some time. Yeah, now we got 3.5-inch loads, if you're shooting ducks and geese and so on. I mean, we see little changes like that. But in the archery world, I mean, technology is moving with light speed. and keeping the regulations and the laws which govern archery hunting, having them keep pace, if you will, with the way technology is changing is something that, I mean, the California Bowmen Hunters has played a major role in. Oftentimes, that you've came to them with regulation changes and explain why it was necessary. I mean, they would support that, and they would often bring that regulation change forward as their own proposal.
Right. And we didn't just say, okay, let's do this. We also go and do some research and get some information together and to qualify to even asking for the change.
And you mentioned, the benefits to enforcement of having a draw weight as opposed to how far you can cast an arrow, but also for the hunters. As a hunter, you want to know when you're fully legal and when you're not, right? So, I mean, that works both ways. You guys have been very active in other political arenas as well, as far as educating decision makers on archery. If you look at my background right now, that's a picture of the archery range that you had at one of our recent California Legislature Outdoor Sporting Caucus events. And every year when we do that shoot for legislators, trying to educate them on firearms and giving them hands-on, experience, if you will, on handling a firearm and busting a few clays out there. I mean, you guys are always big supporters of that event, and you always set up your archery range. And boy, I'll tell you, as one of the organizers of that annual caucus shoot, when you guys first came to us, gosh, probably 10 years ago now, Robert, and said, we'd like to do an archery range at your caucus shoot. Remember, we set it up way down at the end of the trap range, didn't have any lighting out there, anything like that. Weren't sure how popular that range would be during that event, and holy smokes, people just flocked down to you. And then as it started getting dark, we had lights for the trap shooting areas, no lights for the archery. And boy, I got beat up pretty good because people wanted to keep shooting, the archery, and they didn't have the light to do it. But ever since then, we've given you guys a prominent spot. And as you can see in the photo behind me, it was packed when we took that photo. It is always packed, with the legislators and Capitol staff that just want to learn more about archery.
Correct. And some of the other things we have, brought to light the National Archery in the Schools program. It took myself and other individuals and other groups to approach the department and give our spiel of getting this new program that was nationwide into California, to get it into schools as something to, benefit not only archers, but just benefit people of getting in the outdoors and enjoying it. It was just saying, okay, here's the deal. Here's, it's not really going to cost you, this is a grant program, you just got to get staffed, and us as CBH, we can help with that because we have instructors that will volunteer to get the training that NASP requires. And then we'll start, going to the schools and training the teachers. And it's been very, very successful. It's worked very, very well to bring, attention to just plain archery as a shooting sport. If somebody progresses to bow hunting, that's great. But if they just enjoy shooting, arrows, that's great too.
Absolutely. And I can assure you, they do enjoy shooting arrows. That's for sure. Yeah. So what are some of the other programs that California Bowmen Hunters has worked on over the years, or currently is working on, Robert, that could promote archery and archery hunting into the future?
We have a couple of internal clubs, and one of them is called the Big Game Club. That's basically a records program that is similar to Pope and Young, and the minimums are less, but it mirrors what Pope and Young does for scoring. And there is a awards program like Pope and Young every 2 years. Anytime you do sometimes they do that committee. Sometimes we'll host events, mainly in what they call the small game club, that may go after rabbits or squirrels or whatever, turkeys, and help people learn how to hunt those species, the small game species, and introduce them to that world of bow hunting. So those are two internal clubs that are within the group. Bow fishing is also another part. You can take sharks, rays, you can take the carp, of course. So we have that program. We do off our website. there is a link in there that goes for instruction. So let's say you got a bow, or maybe you don't want to purchase a bow yet, you just want to try it, a try it type class. There's a listing of all of the clubs throughout the state that offer that, and there's a whole bunch of them that do. That you would contact them, find out what their schedule is and costs, and be able to sign up for a class and not even have equipment, but have some basic equipment and be able to learn the basic foundations of shooting. And then, if once you tried it and you liked it, hey, this is fun, then you go to the next step. If it's something, okay, I've tried it, but yeah, not my cup of tea, that's fine too. You've tried it.
One of the things that I'm really impressed with California Bowmen Hunters is, I mean, you guys are associated with shoots, and archery tournaments and so forth. I mean, when you get your newsletter, it is just choked full of shooting opportunity, if you will. I mean, if people just want to go out and shoot, they don't want to hunt, but they just want to go compete, in various tournaments or watch various terms, they're everywhere. I mean, it's amazing how many archery tournaments are run throughout California. I mean, from the northern border all the way down to the Mexico border. I mean, there's a ton of archery shooting opportunity out there. And you guys are almost kind of a clearinghouse for getting word out on that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's a good description. We are the state charter for the National Field Archery Association. And again, listed on that same webpage, if you're looking at one of the tournaments, or there's an event schedule, and you can see pretty much every weekend or almost every weekend, there's a tournament somewhere. You may have to travel to it, but there's a tournament somewhere. So if you're just looking just to go out and shoot because you don't hunt, that's fine. That's our other half, the State Archery Association. Some of those tournaments could be related to National Field Archery Association. It'd be a safari type 3D shoot, or related to the field archery itself, which may be some awards program in there related to either the state or regional championships. But you don't have to place anywhere or try to reach a certain goal in order to shoot the championship. You could just be, okay, I've shot 10 arrows and I think I can hit the target. You could go shoot the championship. Just go out there and have fun. That's the best way to learn how to shoot those, is because you're going to be in a group, and we teach people, hey, I'm new to archery, and hope I don't hold you back. And no problem, you're not going to hold us back. We're going to help you learn how to shoot this. The people in the group will help you learn how to shoot, because somebody there will have the experience to be able to do that for you. So don't be afraid. Just come out and have fun.
Yeah, I tell you, it's one thing about Archery Hunters. When I decided I wanted to take it up, I guess it's been about 15 years ago or so now. I mean, the mentors, if you will, that stepped forward and said, hey, let me help you. I mean, we're many. So if anybody's interested in taking up archery, can promise you the CBH can hook you up with somebody local that will take you under their wing and show you how to do it. Robert, we've talked about how you guys have done a great job educating legislators down at the Capitol via your archery range at our annual shooting event. I mean, obviously, you've established a really solid reputation with the Department of Fish and Wildlife for being an ethical group and somebody that they want to work with. I mean, your reputation in front of the Fish and Game Commission is sterling. I mean, you guys are well positioned in all of the various political arenas that make decisions here in California that impact archery and archery hunters.
I would also like to mention that we work with the wildlife officers sometimes. They've understand that they have some trust in us, and we have information that they may need, especially through our records programs. And it's been maybe 12, 13 years ago, we actually had a poaching violation in Yosemite, and it was with archery gear. And at that time, the wildlife officer that had came across the information or was given information to move forward, he knew about our records program in case the individuals had tried to submit the animal to our records program. So he contacted our records program chair and come to find out, this individuals, there's more than one, had submitted stuff to our records program. Well, we have a fair chase affidavit that they sign that has their hunting license number on it, the deer tag number on it, and some other important information for them. So at that point, the information was provided to the wildlife officer, and along with some other information, and come to find out the same individuals not only poached in Yosemite, but poached in one of the city parks down in San Diego.
It's things like that, working with the enforcement on closing that case, and various other things that California Bowmen Hunters has done over the years is why you've established such a sterling reputation, not only with the department, but in front of the Fish and Game Commission, the legislature, like I mentioned. I've had the pleasure of working with a whole bunch of conservation organizations over the past 30 years. I can't think of any group out there that is more active in politics that's of interest and concern to the hunting community than California Bowmen Hunters. I mean, like you just alluded to, you guys are all in on any issue of concern to the hunting community, whether it has anything to do with archery or not. I mean, there's a whole bunch of issues we deal with every year, whether it be at the Capitol, Fish and Game Commission, or whatever, that has to do with hunting with firearms. You guys are all in on those as well. I mean, you guys have been very, very active for the hunting community in general.
Correct. And we had talked about some stuff that we had done earlier. Sometimes city councils or county supervisors sometimes come after, various groups, and archery, shooting of bows and arrows is one of them. And, we've had, Contra Costa County try to shut down all shooting of bows and arrows, whether you're a target archer, fun archer, or bow hunter, it didn't matter. We fortunately got that, taken away, because that would have affected one of the premier archer ranges, in the state.
Right.
And, they're in that county. The same with city of Burbank. The Burbank actually, passed an ordinance that no bow hunting in the city limits. However, there was, it was a 2,000 acre area that was a green belt, let's say, that hunting was allowed. Well, they passed an ordinance saying no, hunting's no longer allowed. We actually sued the city of Burbank for that. So we do take action, when we can, but it also, costs money to do that.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I mean, every political arena where a decision's being considered that would have an impact on archery or archery hunting, you guys have been there. It's pretty amazing. You're one of the few groups. California Bowmen Hunters is one of the few groups that actually has a legislative committee. I mean, you actually have and there's a lot of people on it. I've been to your meetings. I mean, you've got a big group of members of California Bowmen Hunters that are heavily interested in policy decisions which impact archery, and you're very coordinated and very organized on that front. Tell us a little bit about that committee.
Yeah, so the committee is made up of a coordinator and 6 regional reps. And my position is to coordinate the 6 along with our club's regionals. We have 10 regions within our club. They also have a regional rep. So, trying to be in, and for one person to be in, to cover the whole state is impossible. You miss the little stuff, just like I said about Contra Costa. You miss the stuff, about Burbank, and because there's not enough eyes and ears. So that type of organized portion of the committee has been around since the 60s. With working with the other organizations, I might get a call from California Deer Association and say, "Hey, I just heard about this," right? Or maybe mule deer or Rocky Mountain elk, or the Turkey Federation. Hey, I just through the grapevine, this may be what happened, and we'll try to pursue that out. So that's where, the give and take between the conservation groups looking out for each other is very important.
Yeah, and I know here in California, especially in the last 10 years or so, we've done a really good job of trying to facilitate that coordination, right? And like we mentioned earlier, when down at the Capitol or wherever it may be, I mean, California Bowmen Hunters has been all in on everything that has anything to do with hunting, whether it's with a Beretta or with a Matthews. I mean, it doesn't matter. Earlier on in this interview, Robert, we talked a little bit about your own personal experiences, when it comes to how you got into archery and so forth. And again, you played a role in getting me into archery as well. What's your favorite type of archery hunting?
Um, I enjoy it all, of course,
Right.
but probably elk is the most exciting.
Mhm.
But also pig hunting can get pretty exciting sometimes too. So I enjoy it all. I don't necessarily pick one over the other. Unless the freezer is completely empty, then maybe it may be a bigger species to try to help put more meat in the freezer. But I enjoy it all basically.
What about birds? I mean, have you done much archery hunting for birds? I mean, that's a little bit tougher than chasing mammals, that's for sure.
Yes, and in general, the arrow requirements could be a little bit different depending on the bird. So if you're looking at pheasant, then you have to shoot a flu arrow, and I've been fortunate. I have got one, and in flight, I got plenty of pictures of missing, but I do have one in flight, and then quail and grouse. So that's just another part of in general shooting bows and arrows in a bow hunting situation that is enjoyable. Just getting outside and enjoying outside. When we talk about going after species with the bow and arrow, we have to get closer, right? And now, I mean, I teach both bow hunter education, and I teach target archery as a coach. And I'm finding, especially since COVID and pre-COVID actually, that a lot of people are drifting towards bow hunting for costs. So, to go out and do, say, rifle hunting, and for that matter, even bird hunting, the cost of ammunition is high compared to just shooting an arrow and then retrieving it, shooting it again, as long as it's not damaged. And just the cost difference to maintain that type of hobby or sport is not so drastic, where you go through 2, 3, 4 boxes of rifle ammo, and that was, $150, and now you got to go buy another $150. Well, that same $150, has bought me a dozen arrows that I'm still shooting. And so far I haven't broke one or anything else. So I'm still shooting those arrows.
Well, Robert, I've got to tell you, I've had the pleasure of working with California Bowmen Hunters now for almost 30 years, right? And pretty much with you throughout that entire, nearly 30 years period. I mean, as we've talked about, you guys cover the landscape when it comes to not only doing positive things for archery and getting people out there and showing them how to become archers and so on and so forth, but politically as well. I mean, you cover every issue down to the local little city stuff, all the way up to state laws and so forth and so on. You guys really do a great job, and you cover it all. And I think it's worth mentioning that the legislative committee that you referred to, you've been legislative coordinator for quite some time. You're a volunteer too. You don't get paid to do that, and you do it simply because you have a passion for archery. So that's something that I'm very impressed with as well. Whether you hunt with, like I mentioned earlier, whether you hunt with a Matthews or whether you hunt with a Benelli, I mean, CBH is out there fighting for you, and out in the political arenas throughout California, whether it be locally or at the state capitol or whatever it may be. So if somebody's interested in being a member of California Bowmen Hunters and supporting all the wonderful things you're doing for anybody who hunts in the state of California, how can they go about doing
that? The easiest way is to go to our website, which is cbhsaa.net.
Well, I'll tell you, I am a member, of course, of California Bowmen Hunters State Archery Association. I think your annual membership dues are pretty reasonable. Isn't it like $40?
Correct. It's $40 a year. Not very expensive.
And the newsletter alone, which you mentioned, I mean, is worth the $40. I mean, above and beyond all the wonderful things you're doing, out in the various policy arenas like we talked about. But that newsletter, not only does it provide your legislative report, as you mentioned, there's all kinds of other interesting articles in there. And it is just a wealth of information when it comes to archery events up and down the state. I mean, if it's happening in California and it has anything to do with archery, it's in there. I mean, it's an impressive newsletter. It really is.
Yeah, and there's also some hunting stories in there too. So
Right.
some big game stories, some small game stories. Maybe a youngster took his first bullfrog, and so there's all kinds of little stories in there that, if you really pay attention to the article, you learn something, right?
Right.
That's how we learn is read, but you also have to read with the intent of gaining information, not just read it. So some of that is lacking, in our world, but if you pay attention, it's there and you can apply it in most cases. So yeah, there's a lot of information in there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I highly recommend anybody that's watching this interview that you go to cbhsaa.net and you sign up and become a member, because the membership benefits are just phenomenal. They really are. Well, Robert, it's been a pleasure talking to you today. I mean, thank you for taking the time. I mean, I am very impressed with California Bowmen Hunters State Archery Association, and certainly appreciate having you on here, to help talk to our viewers about just the positive things that you're doing. And hopefully maybe we'll get a few more people into the archery world as a result of chatting with you today about this.
Yeah, and thanks for having me on. This has been a good conversation.
I enjoyed it, and I enjoy working with you folks, whenever and wherever I can to help promote archery and archery hunting in California.
Yeah.
And to our viewers, thank you for watching as well. Thank you for tuning into the Outdoor View today, the place where we educate, connect, and learn to protect our outdoor traditions. Check us out on our website at www.theoutdoorview.org, on our YouTube channel, or on our Facebook page. Follow us on Facebook.